cities, the question we were talking about was regarding tchumim, about the halacha that you can't walk a certain amount of distance outside the city, and you are given, when do you start counting the 2,000 amot? The 2,000 amot that from outside the city, you're allowed, when the city ends, let's say you have a wall in your city, you could travel 2,000 amot outside the city, around 4,000 feet, let's say. You could travel, you could walk on Shabbat. Now, if you have houses along, but you see, the question is, when is your city over, right? So we say your city is over when there's a wall. That means your city is over. Now that's one way your city's over. Other way your city is over if you have no houses for a certain amount of space. That means your city is over. So the Chachamim we want to welcome Michael Dahan, one of the great people on this. Looks like Michael Dahan is on. Good morning, Ariel.
Good morning, Rabbi. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, Ariel.
Good
says
to
hello.
see you, Rabbi.
And everybody says hello. Say
Hi,
that.
Ariel.
Long time no speak. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Thank
Okay.
you, Rabbi. Likewise.
Okay. So we said that you cannot. Morning, Mike. So we said that when you count, you have 2,000 amot to count from the time where the city ends. You have 2,000 amot to travel. But not only. Yeah. Yes, Michael. What we're talking about here in the Gemara is Breita states that there's if a house does not have 4 amot by 4 amot, if an area is not 4 amot by 4 amot, around 7 feet by 7 feet, it's not 7 feet by 7 feet, it does not, it is exempt from mezuzah. The total area is not 7 feet by 7 feet, it's exempt from mezuzah. Good morning, Jaime.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Also, we said regarding other halachot, an area that's less than 4 amot by 4 amot, less than 7 feet by 7 feet, is not called a house. So there's certain things that a house creates certain responsibilities, or certain halachot apply to something that's called a house, right? We said if a person builds a house and he did not yet move into the house, that's one way he would not go to war. They would tell him, if you built a house, you didn't move into the house, you don't go to, you're exempt from war. But that's only if it's the house, only if it's which the size is which is 4 amot by 4 amot. So there's another halacha that says that if there's a certain amount of space that the Chachamim, as long as you're a city, as we mentioned yesterday, a city extends, and as long as it's houses, like we said yesterday along Manhattan, you could walk very far. You can walk very far because there are houses all along Manhattan. You never really left the city. So they say that there's something that extends the city. What extends the city? That if you are 70 amot outside a city are also called part of the city. So it's not only that you have the city itself, they gave you a little, about 140 feet outside the city is considered a city. So now it's considered part of the city, like the city extends. It's called an ibur, like a lady who is pregnant, that she's extending because of her pregnancy. Her body has extended because she's pregnant. So good morning. So that is the halacha regarding a city. So now, if you have 2 cities that are within, let's say this 140 feet. Let's say you have around 70 amot. Good morning. You have 70 amot. You have a little over about 70 amot between city number 1, and if you have 70 amot between city number 2. Right? So if you have 2 cities, 2 adjacent cities, one running next to each other, but the total space, the part of the city that's immediately outside the city, that empty space, let's say, is only, so let's say you have 70 amot, we'll call 140 feet outside of this city. And then you have 70, then you have a next city, then you have a space between the next city and this city, but the space between this city and the next city is not, let's say it's around 70 amot, you can connect the two cities. If you have the two cities that come within a certain amount of distance of each other, that closeness that if there's not enough space between city number one and city number two, if you look at the top Rashi says, if you have two cities next to each other, Rashi says, we'll read the Rashi. The first Rashi on Gimel and Beis and 3b. We learned in the Gemara in Eruvin. You give this area, a certain area outside the city, you give each city, you add to each city. If this city has 70 amot and change, let's say 70 amot, which is around 140 feet, plus another 2/3 of an amah, okay? So you have a little over 140 feet. And if between city number one and city number two is a total of, let's say, around 140 amot, so then that will unite the two cities. The two cities will become one. If the distance between, meaning it's as if the cities are running together, as if imagine if city number one, it's as if city number one extended 70 amot and 2/3 of an amah, and city number two also extended 70 amot and 2/3 amah. So therefore, if they extend that amount of space, so now they're as if these two cities are now together with each other, and therefore they became one city. So let me explain it let's get a little technical. Here's city number one, and here's city number two. Okay. So now the question is, do we look at these? These are two different cities, right? We have two different cities. Let's say there's a wall over here. On this city, there's a wall, and there's a wall over here on this city. So you would say they're totally two different cities. And now you have let's say you have the ability of walking 2,000 amot, because you would say you're outside of this city. But we say we don't look at it that way. We say that this city number one is extended. This city number one is not over because it gets a little extra on the deal. Each city gets a little extra. So therefore, city number one is now extended to over here. City number two that originally was over here, as the extension also, he gets a 70 amot extension. So if those extensions run, if each extension runs up to 70 amot and 2/3 and 70 amot and 2/3, let's say around 140 feet, this city it gets an extension 140 feet, and this city gets an extension 140 feet, and now they're right next to each other. So now we look at now that the two cities have, through this extension, are now right next. So therefore, that makes them one city. That makes it, but since the extension only goes 70 amot and 2/3, so if the distance is further than that, if this city is 71 amot away, if this city, when this city is over, if you count 71 amot, and when this city is over, you count 71 amot. That if they only reach each other after 71 amot and 71 amot, they didn't interlap less than that, then they're not united as one. Is that clear? If you have two cities that are next to each other, each city extends a certain amount. They get a little extra on the deal to extend the city. So how much is that distance that they get? Each city gets 70 amot and 2/3 amah. So now, what happens if you have 70 amot and 2/3? Let's say it's 70 amot and 2/3 between each city, or maybe even let's say it's now 71 amot. Let's say it's a little more than 70 amot and 2/3. So now on their own, they're not connected because there's too much distance between this city and this city. But if there's a house that's right, let's say at the spot there's a house that will overlap these two spaces. So you have a house after, let's say you have 70 amot and 2/3, there's a house. Right after 70 amot and 2/3, there's a house right over here. And now that house, if you have a proper house that's 4 amot by 4 amot, that actually extends the city. It's like that makes it, even if the distance between that links it, as long as that house would be the width of the house would overlap, that now it's within 70 amot and 2/3 over here, and 70 amot of 2/3 here. Now that house has extended now they're connected through the house. If there's no house here, if we're a little more than 70 amot and 2/3 and 72 amot and 2/3 from each other, that this from here to here was more than that distance, and you didn't come close enough within that amount, the city was over. But if you have a house that would be right over here, and that house would be able to connect this city, and this city. But that's only provided that house is called a house. What makes it a house? 4 amot by 4 amot. If it's 7 feet by 7 feet, but if it's not a house, that cannot be a connector to say as if there's a house that's within that. Now it's no longer two separate cities. So that's the idea. If there's a house that will connect the two, so that will make it as if they're one city. If there's no house there, so then the problem is if you've gone more than the 70 amot and 2/3, and they don't meet with, if the two cities do not meet within the 70 amot and 2/3, if it's not 70 amot and 2/3 here, 70 amot and 2/3, if it's more than that, therefore they're not meeting, and therefore the city is over, and you have to start counting the 2,000 amot. So it's a little technical. Good morning. The idea here is what's called a house to consider be part of, to extend the city, to make it that it's still the city. You have 2,000 amot.
How much is an amot?
Amot is around between 18 and 24 inches is an amot. You have 18, and amot is around between 18 and 24 inches is an amot.
Why are we calculating in that? It's very old.
What do you
Why
say?
Why can't you count in meters or something, feet,
Yeah, a lot of different people count different ways.
Okay.
Yes. I'm saying you have two, Mr. Safdie, when you say you have when you say you have 2,000 amot to walk after the city is over, meaning when we say you have 2,000 amot to walk on Shabbat, that means when the city is over, when there's no more houses, then, or you have that wall that ends the city, then you have 2,000 amot only to walk. Morning, Jake. But if the city continues and continues and continues, you have much more. You only start, the clock only begins, or the measuring thing that begins, and you have 2,000 amot is only once the city is over. But if you extend the city, if these two cities connect, then you don't even start the 2,000 amot. The 2,000 amot didn't begin. So the 70 2/3 comes in, that each city gets an extension. It says to their city. The 70 2/3 that we give is make believe. When you see a city and the city is over, the city is not over when the city is technically over. The city gets the city gets an extra space of 70 amot and 2/3, which extends the city. So if your 70 amot and 2/3 of this city comes within the 70 amot and 2/3 of the next city, so that unites you, that it's as if the two cities are together. But if you're more than 70 2/3 between city number one and city number two, if the total distance is, let's say, more than 140 amot, meaning you only got 70 2/3 and he got 70 2/3. So his 70 2/3 extended him, he got 70 2/3. You got 70 2/3. But if it's more than 70 2/3, then you're not considered one. You're not considered united. But if you have a house over there, even if you're more than 70 2/3, but if the house will come and overlap within the 70 2/3, that could unite let's say you're 71 amot here and 71 amot here, but there's a house at 70 amot. That house at 70 amot will extend, will connect as if you're one, as if, and then that will unite these two cities together. Morning, good to see you.
They don't overlap.
Right, we're saying if the city, if you have city number one and city number two, so each very good. Meaning they did not overlap. They're only, again, here's city one, city number one, and here's city number two, right? These cities they're not overlapping. The cities are next to each other. But this city ended here and this city ended here. So you have space. You have empty space in the middle. So that's no one's, that's the city is over. The wall, let's say the wall ended here and the wall ended here. So interspace, whatever you want to call it. But now we give you get an extra space of 70. Each city gets its own, got its own extra space of 70 and 2/3. Right, it's like a cushion, exactly. But if you're more than the 70 2/3, then you now no longer are you're not connected. Okay. Okay. But the house has the ability, if you have a house that's a little bit, let's say you're 72 and 71 amot, each house, let's say, is between, if let's say the total distance would be 142 amot between city one and city two, and therefore you're not within 70 and 2/3 of each other. But if you have a house that's right over there, that house, if let's say you have a house that's 70, that house extend this city, but it has to be a house. So that would unite. If you have this house that's, let's say, coming over here, let's say in the middle here you have this house. That house, being that it's within the 70 and 2/3 of each of the, that will unite these cities together completely. I mean, it's now. So now what it does is, now that house extends the city, and you would get 70 amot and 2/3 from that, right? That house now, and now that other city is going to be now closer, because that city is not going to no longer be a distance of 70 and 2/3 from this city, because this house has therefore if it's 66, and therefore now they're united as one city. Those two cities now, and here the issue is of walking, how much you could walk on Shabbat. You don't start counting. It's not considered that you left the city yet. These two cities, as a result of this house that connects the two cities, now makes them one city. And one city, and now what do you get? You could walk throughout both these two cities, and then you get 2,000 amot at the end of this city. Meaning, if you would not connect them, then you would have started 2,000 amot from this city. From when your 70 amot 2/3 ended, you would have got 2,000 amot to go. But now that you've extended the city, so now it's as if this whole city is one city, and now you can keep on walking all the way, and you only start counting 2,000 amot from the back of that city when you finish that city. That's what you're gaining on the deal. Yes, there is. Yes, there's halachot of how much a person can walk on Shabbat. That means there's halachot that maybe you could explain it. That Shabbat should not just be a day. We could explain that I'm just the whole day. I'm just walking the whole day, and maybe it's a lack of resembling of resting the whole day. If I leave the city, so there's a question how much on a Torah. So there's a question is this issue a rabbinic issue, biblical issue, but the 2,000 amot would be a more rabbinic issue. Walking, what does that mean? Walking 2,000 amot, around 4,000 feet outside the city, when the city is over. What? All cities all connected, you can walk as far as you want. No limitation. Then you only have issues of carrying. You have to be careful not to carry, unless there's Eruv. What? Right. Regardless, this has not even regardless of a roof. If a city, meaning if there's no, this is an issue, even though you're not carrying anything. If you're not carrying anything in your pocket, but if you're leaving a city and the city is over, there's limitations how far you can walk on Shabbat if the city is over. But as long as the city extends, you can walk as far as technically you can walk as far as you want. And the way to extend the city, so one way we extend the city is we put before Shabbat, we put food. If we put food within 2,000 amot from a, not more than that, before Shabbat, let's say they would put your food a certain within 2,000 amot, within that 4,000 feet. Let's say you put it at 3950. 39. Let's say this city ends right over here. So technically, if I do nothing on Shabbat, I will only be able to walk 2,000 amot. Right? I can go up to 2,000 amot. I could walk, let's say about 4,000 feet from the end of the city. But if I go ahead and 3,000 at 3950, I put my food there. So therefore, that becomes the food place where my food is. That becomes like my house, and then I could go ahead and walk 2,000 amot from that spot. That's the idea of Eruv Tchumim. That's the idea of putting food before Shabbat. If I want to have a larger area to walk, I will go ahead, and before Shabbat, I will, because not to carry. We're not talking about carry, walk. We're not talking about carry. You can't, we're not, carrying has to do with a roof, if you have an eruv, that whether carry or not. Here is the key. That's a good, we have to look up the halachos of, if food has to be there for sure when Shabbat starts, because that will be you need to make sure it's your place of residence. And that the residence is determined by where your food is when Shabbat would start. So therefore, before Shabbat, that you would have to go ahead and you go ahead and place your food there before Shabbat. And then whatever the halachot are, the halachot exactly how to do it. Yes, it has to be food. And then after that, then that action will give you more rights. You have an extra 2,000 amot to walk as a result of making your place of eating at that spot before Shabbat. You've extended your house. You've made your area. You made your home over there, so to speak. Within, not more than outside the city, you made your home, but within the 2,000 amot, you made it. So therefore, now you extend it. Now the bridges, they don't consider the bridges that you've left out. You left the city, and therefore the custom is people walk from Manhattan to Williamsburg, and we don't look at the bridge as if you went out of the city and you only have 2,000 amot. Okay, let's continue in the Gemara. The Gemara says we're on Gimel Amud Beis, 3b, top of the page. The ain 3b1. The ain ha'achim v'ashutim cholkim bo. The next halacha is brothers and partners. This area, if it's less than 4 amot and 4 amot, is such a small area. So brothers, let's say, if you have brothers want to divide, they have a property that fell to the brothers, an inheritance. So if it's a large property, a brother could say to the other brother, let's divide the house, and you get this part of the house, and I get that part of the house. But if the area of the house is so small, you can't say to your brother. Someone can't say to your brother, "You take, you take this part of the house. I take this part of the house," because it's so inconvenient. Such a small area, it's not sensible for one person to use just that small area. Better that we should use it together as partners, as brothers. Then it doesn't have such use if it's such a small area. So that's what the Gemara says. If the area, this is how the Gemara is understanding at this point. The Gemara is understanding at this point. If the area is less, if the house is so small, it's less than 4 amot, so less than 7 feet by 7 feet, such a small house, you can't say, let's divide the house. I want privacy. I want half of this amount, and you want half of the amount. Because at the end, we're going to be left with such a small amount. The Gemara later on is going to explain that really each one has to be left with a minimum of 7 feet by 7 feet. Each one has to have at least dalan amot in order to tell you, say, you know what, I want to split it. I want my own privacy. You only can force the brother to split it the morning if at the end of the day, each brother will get at least something, a real room of 4 amot by 4 amot. But if they're not going to get a real room of 4 amot by 4 amot at the end, it means the total area has to be at least 8 amot. That the house has to be a minimal size of 14 by 14, that at least each person will be left with 7 by 7 feet of space. But the Gemara at this point understands the literal meaning of this is that if it's not 4 amot, a house that's not 4 amot, you can't force the division of such a house. So the Gemara says, Lema Rebbe Hebel Rabbanan. Let's say that this opinion is Rebbe and not the Rabbanan. Meaning to say, in what way? If it's 8 amot by 8 amot, you're right. We're saying each one has to be left with dalan. At the end of the day, each one has to be left with 4 amot by 4 amot. Okay, very good. So the Gemara said, Lema Rebbe Hebel Rabbanan. Let's say this opinion is Rebbe and not the Rabbanan. If you recall, Rebbe holds the size of a sukkah has to be at least 4 amot by 4 amot. That was Rebbe's opinion. If a sukkah, he says the question we had in the Gemara before, what is the minimal size of a sukkah? Right? We had different opinions. We had, and which is the most lenient opinion, we said is even 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, which like could be 28 inches, 25 to 28 inches by 28 inches, which is a very small area. And Rebbe says no, you have to have the size of the sukkah has to be, the minimum has to be 4 amot by 4 amot, 7 feet by 7 feet. So it seems that this braita that says that a house, in order to be a house, it has to be dalan amot by dalan amot. It has to be 4 amot by 4 amot, 7 feet by 7 feet. That this braita seems to be going like Rebbe, because it seems to be saying if you're less than 4 amot by 4 amot, you're not called a house. So if it's not called a house, so the Gemara is thinking that it's also not called a sukkah, because the same way the Rabbanan hold, if you have a sukkah that's less than 4 amot by 4 amot, a sukkah that's 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim, 20, the Rabbanan say that that's called a place that you live for sukkot. If that's called a place that you live for sukkot, so it should also be considered a place of living for all the other halachot, whether it comes to a guy building a new house and didn't move into, right? We said if it's less than this size, you build a new house and you didn't move into it. If it's less than the size of 4 amot by 4 amot, you don't get the exemption. But if it's good enough for a sukkah, so why shouldn't it's called a place of dwelling for sukkah? So it seems that the Gemara is suggesting, therefore, it will be also considered, should be also considered a dwelling for those other halachot. And the fact that we see by all those other halachot, it's not called a place of dwelling if it's less than 4 amot by 4 amot, if it's less than 7 feet by 7 feet. So the Gemara is suggesting by sukkah, also this opinion would hold it would not be considered a proper sukkah. That's what the Gemara wants to suggest. And then the Gemara says it's not a, and therefore, and the Gemara says it's not such a great suggestion. The Gemara says it's not a proof that this braita goes against the Rabbanan. Afilu tema Rabbanan. We can even say that this Braita goes like the Rabbanan. Why? Ad kan lo kom Rabbanan. When did the Rabbanan say that you could use something less than Dalet Amot by Dalet Amot? When did the Rabbanan say something that's less than 4 Amot by 4 Amot is considered? Oh, Mike is here. I didn't see Mike walk in. When do we say that less than 4 Amot by 4 Amot is considered a Sukkah? It's called a place of lodging. Elul inyan Sukkah. Only when it comes to Sukkah. Sukkah is different. Why? The Dirat Arahi. Sukkah is a temporary dwelling. We have schach on a sukkah. The rain is able to come into a sukkah. I mean, it doesn't mean you should have nice schach, and every little drop comes into a sukkah. But the idea is it's a temporary type of dwelling, a sukkah. So since it's a temporary type of dwelling, you don't need that amount of space to be considered a temporary type of dwelling. However, when it comes to something called a house is a place that people live in a permanent fashion. It's not a temporary dwelling. So to be considered a house, when the Torah refers to a house is a more permanent type of dwelling, and a more permanent type of dwelling requires a minimum size to be called. Is this called a house, or this is a makeshift something? What is this? What is this thing? So to be a house, which represents something that's permanent, you have to have at least 4 amot by 4 amot. You have to have at least 7 by 7, 7 feet by 7 feet. But to be a sukkah, which is a temporary dwelling, which we also said there's an idea of remembering a sukkot. We came out of the sukkot. It's a temporary dwelling, which represents this world is temporary. To remember that concept, this is also, that's good enough if you have 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim. So that's what the Gemara wants to make a difference. Yes, Ariel. Right.
But you do need to have possibility of walking more than 7 yards.
You're saying, would that be considered? That's a good question. If that considered a house, if no one lives there, regarding Eruvin, we have to look up the laws of Eruvin. Eruvin is considered one of the very complicated subjects that we were discussing before about extending cities. It's a very complicated subject. 7 tvachim. It's around 20. It's around 25 to 28 inches by 25 to 28 inches. It's a very small area. So the minimum size of the sukkah. That's the minimum size of the sukkah. It's a one-person sukkah. That's the minimum type of sukkah. He has to have it able enough to put his little table in front of him, and he can sit there and have most of his body and his head in that space. Very small area. Again, and that also shows what? No, I don't know if you're in a sitting position, you're reclining. So the Gemara says, Ad kan lo kam rabban alinyan sukkah adira darahi, which is a temporary type of dwelling. Of a lagabi bayit, but a house, the dira kevahi, it's a more permanent type of living. Afilu rabban amoti. The Rabbana would agree to all those halachot that we said over here, that the if it has a size of 4 amot by 4 amot, that's the place that people live. And that's called a house, and the Torah says a house. However, if it doesn't have 4 amot by 4 amot, lo dari ba'inshi. People don't live there on a permanent basis. Since people don't live there on a permanent basis, it's not called a house. Since it's not called a house, doesn't have those halachot that the Torah is very specific about a house. A house requires a mezuzah, but if you have a room that's less than 7 amot by 4 amot by 4 amot, less than total area of 7. Each room is like its own, right. Each room is like its own, right. Each room is like its own house. Exactly.
How about the bathroom?
Bathroom doesn't, we don't put no mezuzah in bathroom. Because it's a place that we don't put a mezuzah. We said we said a house that's less than 4 amot by 4 amot, less than 7 feet by 7 feet is exempt from mezuzah, from makeh. That's that pasuk that tells you about making a gate. It's patur from the gate, the fence around the roof. But like we said, even if it's patur, this pasuk doesn't apply, but you have to still be careful, make sure to prevent any damage. The aim of tamei ben goyim, such a house is not subject to the laws of leprosy. If the Torah has laws, if there's leprosy, what's it again? Provided the living area, the house, that's the area of the inside. Yeah.
If a room inside a house has to be at least 7 by 7, in a very big house.
Right,
Every room has to be at least 7 by 7 together.
right.
If I have a big house and my roof is smaller than 7 by 7, does it mean it says?
It sounds like, okay, yeah, because the pasuk
The room
says,
would need to make a job.
because the fact is, if we identify the logic, we have to halacha, we identify this as a house, meaning the Torah says, "V'sisa makel gagecha," but the Torah says, "Kisir bayit chadash," you built a new home. So now, is it called a home? You've identified as what's called a home, 7 feet by 7 feet. So once it's a home, the Torah says, make a gate, a fence, for the roof that's on your home. So to me, it would sound like as long as it's a home, as long as you met that requirement of 4 amot by 4 amot, now it doesn't make any difference what the size of the roof is. So, I mean, if people use it again, what's Mark is asking, if you have a home, a large home, and a small roof, with the fact that if it's a small and the roof is less than the size of Dalan Amot by 7 feet by 7 feet, that's his question. I understand you can answer that, but the only question is, since the Torah, the pasuk talks about a house that requires a gate, a fence, if it's a house, you met the requirement. It's called a house. It's the size of a house. And the Gemara, the Gemara here says a house that's not 4 amot by 4 amot is exempt from the gate. It doesn't talk about if everything is about the size of the roof. So then we should focus on the size of also talk about the size of the roof also. So that's very good. Very good. The question is, would be the determining factor to look in the halacha. Do you say, like Jake is saying, if it's such a small area that it's less than 4 amot by 4 amot, is that called? Maybe that's not called the usable spot. That maybe it's not called the roof. What? Houses that people roofs that people would use. Farm a building, and if you own a building and you have a building, if people depends what you use the roof for. If you own an office building, what's the difference if you own it's a private building, office building? You own the building. If it has to be living, it has to be usable. If people are using it, yes. What? That's your house. You think it's only if you own the building, that's your house. If you own you see, okay, when no one lives in the office building. You're asking. He's asking another question. He's asking, is there an obligation of the fact that, listen, mezuzah, you put a mezuzah on your office too, right? I understand, but I'm saying, but your office, your room that you use. So we say right. So the same way you don't live but you use it. That's your spot. You put a mezuzah. So you should, if you have a building, it's your building. But we said in the halacha we looked up last week, the one who's renting, is the one who has the responsibility to put up the fence. So you rent your house to someone, but if he doesn't want to put up the fence, it's your house. You have to go ahead and put up the fence. Have a great day, everybody. What did you say? The fence for the roof. If you rent out a house, you own a house, and the person's going to be using the roof of the house, he has to put up the gate. But if he doesn't want to put up the gate, it's your house. You have to put up the gate. Michael, welcome back. Good to see you. Jaime, good to see you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Take have a good day. Take care. You too. Bye-bye. Jake? Yeah. 5:30. Yeah, great. Yeah, back there with time. Unless, yeah, back to 5:30. Thank you very much. Thank you. If Jaime was on, would you get up? She found it. Sometimes, what am I supposed to do?
You gotta block her out.
Have a good day. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Is it my computer or your computer? I can't hear you. I can't hear her. You know what? She's trying to say something. She's muted.
You're on mute.
Have a good day.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Take care.
You-
Bye-bye.
Okay, now you unmute me.
Yes. Before we heard you, I don't know what the computer showed something. Like something went with the computer, like a lock.
Yeah, you muted me. You muted me by mistake.
I didn't mute you anything. The computer wasn't. I couldn't hear you.
Okay, so now what are you gonna do? Now is it time for Shahrit prayer?
It's now for Shachrit. I'm running upstairs for Shachrit.
Or is it Shahrit now, or is it gone already?
7:30. Yeah, right. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Shachrit.
Because I'm on the way. Okay, leave it, please.
Have a very good day.
So,